This is where you rise, this is where you shine, this is where you become the greatest of all time. History in the making. This is history in the making. History in the making.
Vote for your life.
Hello guys, and welcome to today's video. Today we will be charting Trump's amazing surge during the past month in this video. Unlike in past 4 presidential elections, the most recent polls taken across the main battlefields on the 2024 electoral map missed the final outcome. I have gone back and computed from the 2008, 2012, 2016, and 2020 cycles the average polling error across the 17 most competitive states. With that information, we can observe the possible electoral college map for 2024 should that same polling error arise in these outstanding states. To be clear, I'll be using a weighted error metric, which is adjusted for recency. That means the 2020 polling error has more weight than the 2016 polling error, and so on. Using the most recent polling averages from Real Clear Polling, I will apply this weighted error. Then, using the adjusted results, I will assign ratings on our map like likely, lean, tilt, and toss up. Let's get right into it, first addressing Arizona. Based on the 11 most recent polls taken over the past 3 weeks, Trump currently leads Harris by an average of 1.1%, Trump at 48.4%, while Harris at 47.3%. When one looks back at past polling mistakes in Arizona, Republican presidential candidates have routinely exceeded the polls by an average of 2.3% over the past 4 election cycles. For instance, in 2020, the polls understated Trump by precisely 2.3%, while Biden prevailed by just 0.3%, compared to the 2.6% lead he possessed in the polling average entering Election Day. Arizona stands out since the Republican candidate has been underappreciated in every 4 past elections. In 2008, John McCain by 5 points. In 2012, Romney by 1.6 points. In 2016, Trump by 1.8 points. And in 2020, 2.3 points. Trump's lead would thus increase to 3.4% by including that weighted polling error average of R plus 2.3 into the present Real Clear polling average. Including 1.1% to 2.3%, the average polling error, we get 3.4%. Our margin categories would indicate that Arizona falls in the lean Republican column, shown on the map by the second lightest shade of red. Margins less than 2.5% are tilt. Margins between 2.5% and 7% are lean. 7% to 10% likely, and greater than 10% safe. For your reference, Colorado comes next, worth 10 electoral votes. This is one of the fastest left-trending states in the country. It is no longer under consideration for Trump and the Republican Party, which is shown by our just one poll here since President Biden withdrew from the race. Comparatively to Biden's almost 14-point triumph in 2020, Harris leads by 11 points. Somewhat underperformance. But looking at the sheet here, you can see that over the past 4 cycles, Democrats have actually been underappreciated by 1.8% on average. Fascinatingly, Colorado is the only state where Democrats have been underappreciated in all 4 cycles. Hence, adding 1.8% to Harris's margin yields a Harris plus 12.8 final result, more than sufficient to place Colorado in the safe blue column here on our map. Florida comes next, the electoral powerhouse, with 30 votes online. With Trump holding 50.3% of Harris's 44.2% based on the last 6 polls, the polling average right now shows Trump leading Harris by 6.1%. Trump's great lead here is not surprising, given Florida's recent election cycle's sharp rightward turn. Examining the historical polling error, Florida has undervalued Republicans by an average of 2.5% since 2008. Biden led the final polling average by 2.5 points in 2020, thus the error was especially noticeable there. Nevertheless, Trump ended up winning by 3.4%, the biggest margin for a presidential candidate in Florida since 2004. Florida was also among the few states where Trump improved in 2020 over in 2016. Adjusting for historical polling error, Trump's present 6-point lead over Harris in the Real Clear average increases to 8.5%. On our electoral map, this confirms Florida as a probably Republican state. Let us now travel just north of Florida to Georgia, where Trump leads just half a percentage point, 48.3% to 47.8%. This race falls quite near and within the margin of error. Unlike many other battleground states, Georgia's polls over the past 10 years have been rather accurate, even in 2016 and 2020, which is especially fascinating here. Trump underperformed in many other states, yet he was only underappreciated in Georgia, roughly a point. Examining the historical polling error, Democrats have just a 0.5% overall weighted average bias. Making that little change to the present polling average turns Trump's lead from 0.5% to 1%, so preserving Georgia's tilt Republican column. With Arizona at D plus 0.2 and Georgia at D plus 0.3, both states were the closest in 2020, thus this would represent a second flip for Trump alongside Arizona. Now we venture into the vital Midwest, beginning with Iowa, among the fastest right-trending states in the nation. Since Biden pulled out, we have not seen one poll between Trump and Harris. Though it was still far more competitive than some other states where several polls have come out, Iowa voted for Trump by robust margins in both 2016 and 2020. Without current polling, based on Trump's 2020 margin of +8, we will classify Iowa as most likely Republican. With an average error of 4.6%, Iowa boasts among the biggest polling underestimations of Republicans in recent cycles, for what it's worth. This includes 6 to 7 point underestimations of Trump in both 2016 and 2020, so reinforcing its likely Republican status on our map. We head to Maine now, up to the northeast. This cycle, just 3 polls have been published thus far. Averaged out, Harris leads by 11.6%. Against Biden's 9-point triumph in 2020, this shows an overperformance. Polling Maine historically has somewhat overstated Democratic presidential contenders by an average of just under a point. Maine will be placed in the safe Democrat category on our map after Harris's lead in Maine drops 10.7%, still a strong Democratic margin, is adjusted for that polling error. Based on their 2020 outcomes, Maine's 2nd district falls in the likely Republican column. Nebraska's 2nd district falls in the lean Democrat column. Now let us travel to Michigan, the first of our Rust Belt core trio. Based on its demographics and basic values, Michigan is maybe the bluest of the 3, particularly following its 3-point 2020 Biden vote. But in 2024, Trump has lately led in the polling average by 0.9%, with 48.5% to Harris's 47.6% based on the past 10 polls. For Harris, this change especially worries since she had regularly led Trump by 1 to 2 points since she became the Democratic nominee. The fact that Michigan's polls have historically understated Republicans by 1.7% on average, more especially Trump by 3.5% in 2016 and 5.1% in 2020, adds even more concern. Applying that 1.7% polling error to Trump's present margin, his lead rises to 2.6%, hence shifting Michigan into the lean Republican classification on our map. Harris's road to success depends on Michigan, since it is typically expected of left of Rust Belt neighbors, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Losing all 3 would definitely cut Harris's route to 270 electoral votes off course. Starting 2 states west, our next state is Minnesota, where real clear polling has Harris leading in her running mate Tim Walz's home state by 4.7% on average over the last 4 polls, ranging from Harris +3 to Harris +6, from 49% to 44.3%. Compared to Biden's 7-point margin 4 years ago, this would mark more than 2-point underperformance for Harris. Here on our page, Minnesota's overall weighted error is R+2. Which indicates that Republicans have been underappreciated by a like degree to Michigan, Florida, and Arizona. Clinton led by more than 7 points, headed into Election Day, but came just 1.5 points from a surprise loss, so Minnesota's biggest miss occurred in 2016. Kamala Harris's lead falls to 2.7% now, with a 2-point change to the poll average. Still in the lean Democrat spectrum, regardless here since Minnesota's 10 electoral votes are included to the vice presidential total. Now turning back out west to Nevada, Trump has taken a slim lead in the latest polling average by 0.2%, mostly driven by a recent Wall Street Journal survey showing Trump up by 6 points among 600 registered voters. Given Nevada has voted blue in every one of the past 4 presidential contests, this is the first time Trump has led in Nevada since late August. Another alarming pattern for Harris. Fascinatingly, Nevada's polling history shows a modest overestimation of Republican support, with an average bias of 0.6% in their favor. This makes Nevada among only 4 states where Democrats have been underappreciated on our pages. While polls did overestimate Biden's performance in 2020, like almost every other state, the reverse was true in 2016, 2012, and in 2008 when polls understated Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Should we change Trump's slim lead in line with historical bias, the outcome turns to a meager Harris lead of 0.4%, still within the margin of error. Still, this is sufficient for Nevada to tilt in Harris's direction on our electoral map. New Hampshire, up in New England, comes next. Biden won New Hampshire by 7 points in 2020. Like Minnesota, Trump came close to flipping it in 2016 before it turned decisively back into the Democratic column. Harris leads Trump by 7.4%, according to the most recent average from actual clear polling, a little increase on Biden's margin from 2020. But New Hampshire has a R+2 historical polling error. Thus, like Minnesota, the GOP has been understated by 2 points on average. The error was same in 2016 and 2020, undervaluing Trump by 3.8% in both cycles. Using that 2-point change to the current polling average, Harris's lead drops from 7.4% to 5.4%, so transforming New Hampshire from likely Democrat to lean Democrat on our map. New Mexico follows. New Mexico voted to the right of adjacent Colorado for the first time in more than 50 years in 2020. This pattern is expected to continue this November. Compared to Biden's 11-point victory in 2020, Harris leads Trump by 8 points on average over the past 3 polls. New Mexico is one of the 4 states where Republicans have been overestimated historically, though. Here, starting in 2008, the average polling error is D plus 1.3. Account for this. Harris's lead rises from 8 points to 9.3 points. New Mexico stays therefore quite firmly in the likely Democrat category on our map. Now moving to North Carolina, where the actual clear polling average shows Trump with a meager 0.5% lead. Polling Harris's 48.2% at 48.7%, 11 polls total make up this average. Trump leads in 7, Harris leads in 1, and 3 show a tie. Although all of these polls have margin of error, the only one displaying Harris in the lead comes from less credible pollster, Atlas Intel. Examining past polling mistakes, North Carolina has a history of overstretching Democrats by 2.5%. For instance, the final polling average in 2020 had Biden ahead by almost 2 points, yet Trump prevailed in the state by 1.4%. In 2016, polls also favored Clinton, but Trump ultimately prevailed by nearly 4 points. Correcting for 2.5% historical polling error, Trump's lead rises from 0.5% to precisely 3%. On our electoral map, this places North Carolina in the lean Republican range. Now returning to the Midwest, Ohio, once regarded as the perfect bellwether, but today regarded as consistently Republican-leaning. Based on average of the most recent 7 polls by Real Clear Polling, Trump leads by 7.4%. Fascinatingly, Trump has led exactly 6 points in each of the last 3 polls, which would imply a minor underperformance relative to his 8-point winning margin in both 2016 and 2020. Having said that, Ohio has one of the biggest average polling mistakes linked with Iowa at R plus 4.6%. While Barack Obama was underappreciated in 2008 and 2012 when he won the state, Trump greatly exceeded his limited polling leads in 2016 and 2020 by 6.5% and 7.2% respectively. He led Biden by less than a point in 538's final average in 2020, for instance, but he ultimately prevailed by 8 points. Correcting for Ohio's historical polling error, Trump's lead rises from 7.4% to 12%, so transforming Ohio from likely Republican to safe Republican on our chart. Trump leads with 237, just barely ahead of Harris's 219, leaving 82 votes still up for grabs with just 4 states left, and neither candidate yet scoring 270 electoral votes. Let us now turn to Pennsylvania, among the leading battleground states in 2024. Real Clear Polling claims that Trump currently leads by 0.3%, having a vote share of 48.3% to Harris's 48%. Trump has led in 7 of the past 12 polls, marking the first steady lead he has maintained in Pennsylvania for some time. Pennsylvanian polls historically have understated Trump. Hillary Clinton led by 4.1% in the polls leading up Election Day in 2016, but Trump turned out victorious by 0.7%. While Biden's triumph was duly expected in 2020, the polls exaggerated his margin by 3.5 points. The average bias turns out to R plus 2.2. Making this change, Trump's lead increases to 2.5%, classifying Pennsylvania as a lean Republican. Given Texas still under development, this should all but assure Trump's triumph. Now heading to Texas, the second biggest state with 40 electoral votes online. Real Clear polling finds Trump leads by 5.7%, almost exactly to his 5.6% victory in 2016, driven mostly by a 4.5-point underestimating of Trump in 2020. When 5.38 had Biden inside 1 point, Texas has historically overestimated Democratic support by 1.9% since 2008. But Trump won by 5.6%. Making this change, Trump's lead in Texas rises to 7.6%, transforming our map from lean to likely Republican. With 2 states to go now, Trump rises above the 270 mark and earns 296 electoral votes, so guaranteeing his victory. Let's ultimately travel to Virginia, where the most recent poll average shows Harris leading by about 6.5 points. Although this still marks underperformance for Harris, the Commonwealth voted for Biden by 10 points in 2020. So this is the strongest advantage Democrats have held all cycle. Recall Biden had trailed Trump here while he was still running. That's remarkable given Virginia's historical polling is among the most accurate. Misses in 2016 and 2020 fall within 2 points. After adjusting for the weighted error, Harris's lead just slightly rises from 6.4% to 6.5%, considering the rather small polling errors. Consequently, on our electoral map, Virginia will fall under the lean Democrat classification. We wrap the video with Wisconsin last. The Badger State's actual clear polling average shows Kamala Harris trailing Donald Trump by a shockingly narrow 0.3%. Harris has led since late July, same as in Michigan and Pennsylvania. She hasn't quite lost her edge here yet. Regarding polling mistakes, Wisconsin boasts some of the biggest underestimations of Trump in past cycles. Hillary Clinton lost by 0.8% in 2016, yet led by 5.9% in the final average. Biden led by 8.4% in 2020, but only prevailed by a meager 0.7%. Among really competitive states, R plus 4.3 is the overall weighted polling error. It is highest here. Harris's slim lead is entirely flipped by applying that 4.3-point adjustment into a Trump advantage of 4 points. Wisconsin thereby shifts on the electoral map from tilt Democrat to lean Republican. Donald Trump would thus win the 2024 presidential contest with 306 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 232 by using the most recent polling averages and key battlegrounds across the nation, then shifting them by the average error in the past 4 presidential elections. The comment section below allows you free space to express your ideas and emotions regarding this map. I value all kind of comments, positive or negative. For today's video, however, that does it. Call out to my channel members found below. Please leave a like on the video should you enjoy it. Kindly subscribe to my channel down below. Here you can view more of my channel's content. As always, I really appreciate you viewing. See me next time.